After reviewing the water, energy, food nexus guiding principles, where do we go from here? What are some of the applications and successful stories built on the Nexus platform? Who should care about the Nexus? Is there a role for the Nexus in environmental, social, and economic sustainability? Is there a role for a community of practice in moving the Nexus agenda forward? The Nexus is built on a multi-stakeholder approach that's vertical in terms of the scale and that's horizontal in terms of the audience. If I look at the multiplicity of the stakeholders, whether they're the public sector, private sector, or civil society, each should care about the Nexus for different reasons. The public sector should care about the Nexus in terms of who owns it, how is it governed, what are the incentive procedures and the policies that need to be made to promote sustainability moving forward. What is a sustainable water policy, food policy, energy policy that does not infringe on the other resources? The private sector would care about the Nexus in terms of optimizing their operation, whether it's a water utility, energy utility, or technology provider. They would also would like to see Nexus-friendly trends in terms of technology and where are the proper investment that needs to be made in the Nexus. Civil society would be very much interested as we would like to improve on the quality of life, health, and reducing the risks, as well as information about citizenship, about trade-off and the choices that we need to make in terms of changing consumer behavior as far as the resource allocation is concerned. Water, energy, food nexus community of practice could be very useful in this regard. That community of practice could help develop a global science policy platform that shares data, that shares knowledge and best practices, defining data gaps, and develop a common Nexus accounting framework. Last but not least, this community of practice could help monitor the effectiveness of Nexus government. This governance issue is going to be hunting us for years to come. What are good governance models for the Nexus that help us move that agenda forward? Last month, the world community converged to agree on 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The post-2015 agenda and implementation of that agenda would have a huge implication of the Nexus. These goals are developed by disciplinary groups focusing on major issues. Achieving any one of these goals requires multidisciplinary approaches where the Nexus can be ideal platform. For example, how do we achieve the water goal, goal number 6, without sacrificing food security goals, goal number 2, when food security is inherently dependent on water availability? If we focus on the data modeling challenge in the Nexus, there are tremendous challenges there. I would start again in the stakeholders, knowing your stakeholder. Who is your stakeholder? Whether it's a local, whether it's a national, regional, who is the stakeholder? Is it the government or is it public sector or private sector? This would dictate the scope and the modeling platform in which you want to use. The suggestion is to keep it simple. The system is already complicated. You could add other externalities and imposing factors on the platform, but keep it simple because analytics becomes very, very complicated. The scale, scope, and the modeling should be consistent with the needs. Processes modeling or trade-off analysis are two additional factors that need to be factored in trying to define the modeling platform. Last but not least, the data. It's the interlinkages data that's important. That data builds on disciplinary data, but identifies the interconnectedness among these resources. Data resolution, data quality, and data gaps and access to data is very, very important. We'll highlight on few examples where the Nexus can and have been useful. The state of Qatar currently produces 10% of its food locally. The analysis is done if 10% additional food to be produced locally, even though we have a high water footprint, high energy and cost, the limiting factor was land availability. We're adding 10% to the current food production would add 150 or more % of land, which is not available. Other examples at home is the nexus between water, energy, and transportation, where we're looking at the sustainability of the energy production in the state of Texas, where we look at a scenario-based approach, where we look at that trade-off analysis, and we were looking at the sustainability index, which is an economic, environmental, and social indices. The implication of this work is tremendous when it comes to policy, regulations, subsidy, developing new technologies and transfer that technology. And last but not least is changing consumer behavior, the way we have been approaching this. The last example I'd like to highlight is how can the Nexus be used to bridge a water gap in a way not to infringe on other resources. The state of Texas has a variety of ecozones. Levers or solutions that work in one region of the state does not work in other regions. How can you use the Nexus to assess a holistic view where and when these solutions can work? The Nexus can be very useful in these cases to allow us to have an unbiased, holistic view at the solutions spatially and temporally. Thank you.